In order to prepare the table for cutting, the first step in the process is to clear the table of any debris from the previous cutting. So generally using a broom or a flat ruler, the spreader will take the ruler and the broom and literally sweep off all of the scraps onto the floor and then sweep the floor up of all those scraps for safety. The next step in the process will be to determine how far down the table the marker is needed in order for preparation. So the marker that's going to be cut will be unrolled down the length of the table, and at the other end of the table, wherever the marker ends, there'll be a mark placed on the edge of the table. And the marker will be rolled back up. And put aside. The next step in the process is to put down a piece of underlay paper starting at the beginning of the spread and rolling the underlay paper out on top of the table all the way down to the other end of where the marker will be. The underlay paper serves two purposes. One is to provide smooth surface for underneath the cutting machine. The second is to provide an indication of the bottom layer when the cutting is completed. The underlay paper would be rolled out to the mark at the end of the marker and then taped down in place in order to make sure that it doesn't shift around. The edge closest to the spreading operator would be aligned parallel to the edge of the table. The next step in the process is to place an end line and a selvage line on the craft paper. At the end of the table, perpendicular to the side of the table, a steel ruler will be used and a line will be drawn that will be perpendicular to the end of the spread. This will indicate how far down the fabric will be started in the spreading process. Next, using the ruler parallel to the edge of the table, a selvage line will be drawn along on the craft paper, and this will become a guide for the spreading process, showing where the fabric will be aligned as it's being spread. The next step would be to take the marker, aligning the end of the marker on the end line on the craft paper, and aligning the selvage line of the marker on the selvage line of the craft paper. The marker will then be unrolled all the way down the length of the table. Once it's been aligned properly, the spreader will identify where the splice marks are in the marker and transfer those splice marks to the craft paper on the table. This way, when the marker is taken away, the spreader will still know where the splice occurs in the marker. That will continue all the way down to the end of the table. Then the spreader will make a mark at the end of the marker. Depending upon the method of spread, an additional number of inches may be added to the length of the marker to accommodate the hand cutting at the end, and also possibly to accommodate the stretch index factor, the amount of fabric that might need to be spread beyond the length of the marker to accommodate stretch. Once that's completed, the marker will then be rolled back up and put aside. The next step in the process will be for the spreader to then cut the craft paper off beyond the end of the marker in order to prepare